Welcome in to the I-80 Boys podcast, baby. Let's freaking go. I am one of the co-hosts, definitely the better looking one, as I always say. This other guy next to me, I think he has a name. We're really not sure. Go ahead.
I'm your co-host on this wonderful journey. Your boy, old C Hunt out here. All righty, son. Chris, how have you been, man? I mean,
man, I've been all right, bro. We are, I do this. It feels like I've been saying this for the last 2 months. I start every show like this, man. I'm hyped, man. We are, less than 10, 15, 13 days away from I don't even know the dates. I mean, we're so close, guys, for college football coming up here, man. I am super hyped. I don't even care who the hell's playing. I just want to watch some college football. I've been getting hyped. Obviously, Christian, you've been watching some NFL preseason, haven't you?
Yeah, been watching a little bit of it here and there. I know the Falcons ended up beating the Dolphins, but that's fourth string. You know what I mean? It's so hard to really gauge it. I mean, I will say this, Chris. Before we get kind of kicked off in the show, we start looking at some questions here in the chat. Yeah. It's so interesting to me the different philosophies a lot of these NFL teams take as far as how they manage the preseason. Like a guy like Patrick Mahomes and Justin Fields and some of these other guys, they'll play them, but then some of these other teams, they choose to play their third or fourth string quarterback.
I agree. It is funny based on teams. You saw, who the hell was it Russell Wilson played a shit ton of snaps the other night. Yeah. You know what I mean? It's funny. You're right, though. That's a really good point. Like some coaches are like, no, you guys are playing at least 2 series. Justin Fields played a ton. Not a ton. He just destroyed it in about 3 passes with DJ Moore. The Titans tried out, it's kind of funny. They don't know who the hell their quarterback is, played some Will Levis. You guys remember him. He was at Kentucky last year. Then they had Malik Willis from Liberty a couple years ago too. So it is very interesting, Christian, how certain teams approach the preseason. Aaron Rodgers didn't play, the Jets have played 2 preseason games, I think already, and they haven't put him out on the field yet, but it's weird how they do that. My Finns definitely didn't. I don't even think the Falcons really played anybody too crazy either. But yeah, it is different, man. NFL is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, Chris, some big news from us here. We finally are on the Venmo for you guys. Again, we've put a link in the comment section here, so if you want to donate and help the boys out, feel free to donate down there. We appreciate everything in advance. All right, scrolling around here, we've got some other stuff here. The giveaway, yes, so we're still doing the giveaway. Once again, with that giveaway, the way it'll work is it's the 1,000 subscriber giveaway. So I think right now we're sitting almost at 290, somewhere in there, subs. So once we hit 1,000, that's when we're going to be giving away the PS5, the Xbox, custom jersey, and some mini helmets for
guys. You. Guys, get on top of that. By the way, I can't stress this enough. You guys need to drop, sub in the comment on that video so we can track this. This doesn't tell us on YouTube whether you're a subscriber or not. Some people have it private. Some people have it public. We can't see that. So drop it in. Even if you are a sub, let us know. I have a tracker. We got it all tracked. I just need you guys to do that. It sounds super easy. Please do it, though. I know if I was a weekly call-in or a normal person on the show or something, man, to win a PS5 or an Xbox, Series X, these things are worth quite a bit of money. Please get in there and please just drop it. It takes, 10 seconds of your time, guys. I appreciate the support.
Absolutely, Chris. So let's kind of look here a little bit. And Mike says he subscribed last show. Yep, we definitely appreciate that, dude. I mean, that means a lot. We need every sub we can get right now to help us out. Let's see here. Let's kind of look into some more of these comments here. On 1 second. All right. Oh, all right. This is pretty interesting here. OU. Crypto wants to talk a little OU football. Well, we'll kind of entertain it a little bit here. I don't mind talking about that.
All right.
I think as far as I think you guys are sorry, not you guys. I was reading a comment there, but I think as far as OU football is concerned, Chris, this is a team we've kind of touched on a little bit. We keep kind of coming back to them. I think OU could potentially. They've got a shot this year, right? I mean, second-year coach Brent Venables. We talk about it all the time. They end up. Let's see. They end up. Hold on 1 second. I'm going to do this. When you guys call a game, please start later games. Hey, we're calling the games we want to call, Crypto. if they start at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon, we're going to call it at 1 o'clock on a Tuesday afternoon. You know, the Falcons-Dolphins game started at 6. Notre Dame-Navy starts at 1. You know, there's a couple games that are going to start later. And that's just because we're calling the games. I can't do anything about that. So, but, you know, and that's just what we want to do. So, you know, if every game could start at 7 o'clock, I would love that. I would probably be more on board with that. Daniel says, "Oh, you won't do much, probably 6-6." Woo! Yeah, I think basically where I was going with this is, you know, let's do this. I mean, you know, sorry, Mike here. Yeah, sorry, we're all over the place. Question, let's talk OU. So basically what I was trying to say, Brent Venables' second year.
Yep.
Right? Second year coach. We see the most progression in coach's second year. He's got a quarterback coming back. You know, he's got a tight end coming back that's played at that program in Austin Stogner, if I'm not mistaken. I think the defense, which was very spotty at times last year, I think they're going to be better this year as well, because that's Venables' forte, if you will, right? I mean, you look at some of the greats, Nick Saban, Kirby, those guys, their second year at programs. I mean, that's when you see that change, especially on that side of the ball. So that's my take on it. Chris, what do you think?
No, OU's, you know, to answer your question here, no, OU is a very, very interesting team this year. They are. This is the last year in the Big 12. I mean, they're moving over to the SEC. I think them and Texas especially wants to go out with a bang this year. Big 12, we say it over and over. It's like throwing a dart at a dartboard over there. OU is one of those teams. I think they need to leave this conference with 9 wins or more this year. I have them pegged right around there. OU, can they surprise some people? Absolutely. Mackenzie Milton's been there for a while. They got a bunch of experience. Defensive side of the ball this year is a huge question mark for me. If they shore that up, I'll make this quick. They're going 9-3, 10-2. They can knock off Texas in the Red River rivalry game or shootout, if you will, guys. So, like, I'm not too worried about Oklahoma. I just think that defense side of the ball, Christian, you know this. We've touched on Oklahoma here and there this year, but they're a very interesting team in the Big 12, 100%. Good question, by the way.
Absolutely. You know, jumping back into crypto here, he says, do some later games. Yeah, and that's kind of what we want to do too. I mean, I definitely want us to do it. You know, again, it's nothing but love over here on this end. Early on, you know, I can just kind of let you in on the preview of what we'll do. The Florida Utah game, that'll be at 7, I think, Central Time. And then we're also going to be doing the Huskers and Utah game simultaneously. We're really going to have to buckle it down and kind of talk about how we want to do that one. That one's going to be kind of a dual cast, if you will, for us. So, and then, yeah, like I said, I mean, I think Texas and Alabama, they play like at 6 or something like that.
Yeah.
As well. We'll probably end up calling a Pac-12 game, and you know how those Pac-12 games are, man. I mean, it's Saturday night, so we might end up staying up pretty damn late.
Yeah, well, Daniel will definitely appreciate that once we do one of his Husky games when it gets like USC or somebody. We'll do it, though, for real. Yeah, the other thing with that, on top of that, though, I don't know if you brought it up, Florida State LSU, that's the monster late night game. We're definitely doing that one. That one, to me, is probably one of the biggest games of the whole entire season. It just happens to be week 1 with those two. So you got 2 top 6 teams, 7 teams battling it out week 1. So that's awesome. Christian, anything else you want to touch on here in the chat before we get into it?
Yeah, Mike says, OU will have a lot working against them, guaranteeing the officials will not give them many calls since either are leaving, unfortunately. That is true, dude. I mean, you have to know that they're fired up, man. I mean, just because I guarantee the Big 12 commissioner is going to say, hey, we're going to do everything we can to try to screw Texas and Oklahoma.
Right. Unfortunately, though, those are the two powerhouses or the faces even of your conference, though. OU, though, I like OU this year. Christian, you're really high on them. So I think they played like week 5, I think. Somewhere in there. They play super early when they play that shootout game.
Yeah.
So that ought to be interesting. If both teams do come in there undefeated, and what I mean undefeated, Texas has to beat Alabama before that. That'll be an interesting game, honestly. That OU, if they're looking good like they should, I watched them in person last year against the Skurs, and holy shit, man, they looked great against us, but didn't do anything after that as far as defensively. They couldn't stop a nosebleed. So OU, very interesting team this year. Good, like I said, good question. We don't talk about them probably near enough, but they're one of those intriguing teams, definitely on my radar.
I've got a question for you guys, the fans of the show here too, and that is, I don't know, dude. There's something about that game being super early in the year. It's like always an 11 or 12 o'clock kickoff.
Yep.
I don't like the Red River rivalry being played that early. So hopefully when they come to the SEC, they redo it and they make it like one of the last games of the year, kind of like the Iron Bowl. We throw in some 3 o'clock, some night games in there. I would love to see that. Over on CBS. I mean, that to me, prime time game, I would say.
Yeah, no, that's funny you actually say that. Now that you say that, Christian, I always watched the Texas-Oklahoma game, have since I was a little kid, and it's always on at 11 o'clock. Always. It's never moved. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Ever. Never been played any later than that, I swear to God.
Yeah, it's like, can we get like a night game kickoff, over there in the Big 12? I mean, just a one and like a prime game here. Come on now. Let's see here. We got somebody missing here. They said, "Where's Children in the Corn?" I don't know. I don't know. So let's look at doing this. So we've covered that. Chris, we'll go ahead and jump into the first segment here. We'll let you guys keep piling in here on the chats. Hot take, Maryland will upset either Michigan, Ohio State, or Penn State. Now, again, I want to preface this. We're not saying they're going to upset all of them. This is just a hot take. We love getting people fired up here. We love looking at the coin a little differently here. Do they have a shot, Chris, to upset any one of these schools this year? Absolutely. And I'm going to tell you guys why. I'm not saying it's going to happen. I love when we do these and people just don't understand where we're coming from. But Maryland's a very interesting team, guys. Last year, they went 8-4 or 8-5, excuse me. They've won 15 games total. I think the last 2 years they've had 2 winning seasons. They haven't been bad, right? They got Tua's little brother. I can never say his first name correctly. I'm not going to try to pronounce it now. This kid was recruited by Alabama, by the way. He's been around college football for quite a while. Christian and I are super, super high on quarterbacks, like Bo Nix, been around a while. Michael Penix, guys like that. Been playing football for 3, 4, 5 years. Maryland's very interesting. They are. They do play in the East, though. Which is probably their biggest knock. You stick them in the West, they're probably competing with Wisconsin, the Iowas of the world over there. Unfortunately, though, Christian, this year, they got to play Ohio State, Penn State, obviously, and Michigan. The good news is, though, they got Penn State, Michigan at home. They also have to play Illinois, who I'm very high on this year, obviously from the West. We've talked about them at length a couple of podcasts ago, Christian. I do think they have a shot. They're kind of a weird team under Mike Locksley. He's been there for 5 years. I think this is going to be his 5th year. He's done a great job with that program. He recruits very well. Maryland's put out some stud players, by the way. DJ Moore, Stephon Diggs. These guys put out some people in the NFL. Vernon Davis back in the day. I can name a bunch of players in the NFL from Maryland. They do a good job up there recruiting kids. The big thing is their defensive side. Can they – I actually kind of have this weird feeling this year. They knock off one of these 3 teams. I know people in the chat. I know once we get this on YouTube, people are going to laugh me off the internet about it. But they're an awkward, weird team with a veteran quarterback that can throw the football. I guarantee you right now, Christian, Alabama wishes they had this kid still there. He would be their starter compared to the 3 trash cans they got walking around there now. So, Maryland's a very interesting team. Very interesting team. They recruit well. They got a lot of kids back from last year's team. It'll be interesting to see what happens. I'm not going to pick which team, but they do have 2 of the 3 at home, and that's a big thing, man. It really is in college football, especially nowadays. So, I don't know if I want to put my foot down, but I could see this definitely happening. It wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't. If Maryland beats Ohio State or beats Penn State, and hey, holy shit, Maryland doesn't get near enough love. Like I said, a good year last year in the Big Ten, especially on that side of the conference at 8-5. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, and it's like you said, I mean, they're one of those teams that, dude, I could see pulling an upset this year, an upset or 2 this year, right? And derailing some teams' playoff chances, right? Because they returned, I think it's Talia Tagovailoa.
There you go.
And bring in some great talent around him too, dude. I mean, so I like Mike Locksley as a coach, and I trust him to win the games he's supposed to.
Yeah.
But, the biggest question mark for me, for Maryland really is going to be how that line holds up, man. I mean, I saw Talia get beat to hell last year in that Ohio State game and some of those games. I mean, you know how the defensive lines in the Big Ten are, and they are unforgiving if you do not have a decent offensive line.
Well, it's funny you bring up the Ohio State game. They played Michigan closer than anybody did last year, other than obviously the TCU game. You know what I mean? They played them super close. That was like a one-score game at the end of the game. I mean, they're kind of an awkward, unorthodox type of team when you play them. They run some goofy stuff. I mean, but I give Loxley credit, man. 5 years there, and that program's had a bad history of coaches running through there and some of the stuff that's happened, behind the scenes over the years and stuff like that. He's done a great job there. Like I said, the guy recruits incredibly well. I mean, he's put out some talent. They always had, I don't know what it is with that Maryland area. Even in basketball, kids from that area are awesome. So I don't know what it is, but they get athletes, they get kids that can play in the NFL. It wouldn't shock me this year. I mean, would I be shocked a little bit maybe because one of these three teams obviously are, most people got these three teams in your top 10 right now, but they might shock the world and beat one of these. I wouldn't be like overly floored and be like, holy crap, Maryland beat somebody. Because I watched that game against Michigan last year, Christian. That was an 8-point game or a 6-point. It was super, super close. It really pushed Michigan, was down most of that game. It was an ugly game, but they held in there, man.
Dude, you're right. They held in there and they held their own against a couple of these teams last year, man. I mean, here's the thing, right? To me, I look at who do they have the best shot at upsetting. We got their schedule pulled up here. I think it's either Ohio State or Penn State, right? Because Ohio State has to figure out the quarterback position. O-line play could be a little shaky at times as well, just because of who they're losing. Penn State, to me, the reason why I put Penn State on there too is they got to look for Drew Aller to step up, this year and kind of prove something, obviously, prove his rating as a quarterback. But again, I mean, they're going to play at Maryland in that game, which, I mean, that could be a trap game for the Nittany Lions.
Oh, yeah.
So it's late enough in the year, November 4th.
I'll say it. I'll add another team to this list. Like I say, I'll say Illinois. Man, I do. I think Illinois with their smash mouth football, the way they want to play football, they're not a high scoring team really by any means. Their defense was number 1 overall last year in the country, which is crazy. Not a lot of people know that, but I could see Maryland pulling off even one of them. I know that's not in the answers right here, in the question, but it wouldn't shock me if they do something kind of crazy this year. It really wouldn't. I have Maryland finishing 8-4 this year, which I don't think is a bad year. But if they win a 9-3, that means they either beat one of the 4 teams that I just mentioned. So it's definitely within the realm, especially when you got a veteran quarterback, Christian. This kid, obviously, we know who his brother is too. Plays for my Dolphins. He played 1 year at Bama. Actually did play a little bit, by the way. This kid was highly recruited. This kid can play. Like I said, Alabama would die to have this kid right now as their starting quarterback versus the dumpster fire they got back there now. So,
yeah, I mean, dude, you're not wrong about that. Speaking of Michigan, Chris, right? I want to pause here for just a second. So I don't know if you saw this or not, but and if you have in the chat, I'm sure you have in the chat, but there was this thing with Jim Harbaugh that was going around. We touched on it a little bit as far as the whole Burger Gate and all that stuff. He was facing a 4-game suspension. Well, apparently the NCAA has since withdrawn their negotiated offer of 4 games, which to me and everything I'm reading kind of says, hey, they're going to look to revisit this again in the offseason, and there is a potential that they could suspend him an entire season, maybe. They could be 8 games. It could be more than 4 games is what I'm thinking.
I was reading the same thing that you have, and you're not wrong about this, but I'm going to say this right now. That would be the best thing for Jim Harbaugh. He's been trying to get out of Michigan for the last 2 years. He beat Ohio State. And now he don't want nothing. I hate to say this. It's going to sound terrible when I say he don't want nothing to do with Michigan. I know he's a Michigan man, but the NFL give him the 2 thumbs up last year. He was looking to get out of there. He was putting his name in with multiple teams in the NFL to try to get a head coaching job. I think this is what he wants, because if he can pull it off this year, and by the way, I came on here last week, finally gave my prediction about who I have winning a national title. I think Michigan gets it done this year. That's my team. That's who I picked. Am I super confident in it? No. But I think that would be the best case for Jim Harbaugh, right, Christian? I mean, hell, walk away. Screw it. I'm done after this year. It's very well known he is trying to get back to the NFL. And hell, to get this off his back, this monkey off his back for a year, and hell, whatever happens after that, he probably doesn't care.
Yeah, you're not wrong. It's one of those things where, to me, this makes it simpler for Harbaugh, because this just pretty much forces your hand there, right? Where, hey, this is your year, so you have to do something this year in order to be able to, to really make your case to go back to the NFL. I mean, I'm not saying that, hey, a position won't come open and they won't consider him, but right now the hot move is, really, dude, think about it. I mean, right now the thing in the NFL is to stay within the NFL, hire coordinators. I mean, there's only a handful of guys that if they said, hey, I want to go to the NFL, they're probably actually going to look at here. So it'll be interesting here. How many players is Iowa losing to the betting? Right, I had to look it up real quick. I think it was just one, if I'm not mistaken. It's Arlen Bruce. I think the other guys that bet on those games are either not. They're not with the program anymore.
I do know they charged like 6 or 7 people from Iowa and Iowa State, so it was going on both those schools. I can't answer that to that degree. I just heard that the other day. I don't know how factual that is, but because one of them was a basketball player. Nebraska has him actually. Which is crazy, by the way. Christian, did you read that one of the kid that was a kicker for Iowa was like taking the unders on every game basically last year, and they scored a touchdown to win a game, and he lost like a couple $100 on it. It's hilarious, and he missed 2 field goals in that game. Just think about that for a second. Was he trying to like manipulate that, or you know what I mean? People have been throwing that out there on Twitter. I just thought it was funny. I was like, holy shit.
I had not heard that, but and that's the thing too. I mean, is it hearsay? You don't really know. It's all part of the mystery of football that I have come to love. Is these stories where you're like, oh my god, maybe that's why Alabama's kicker never made any field goals because he was secretly betting on all those all those games.
Right? It's like holy shit. I mean, anytime I can throw it at the Iowa man, I will. I just had to laugh though because it's like holy shit, man. These guys couldn't score a point last year on offense. And you're taking unders in the game, and then are you really intentionally missing field goals because they were atrocious on offense last year? So it's like,
no, and I will say this too, Chris, as far as that, and it's a controversial take, I know, but I think if you're betting on your team to win, I think that should be allowed. You know what I mean? As long as it's not like impacting the game somehow, right? Because I mean, if you just, I think it should depend on how you're betting, right? If you're betting on your team to lose, and then obviously you go out and play like shit, then it's a whole other thing,
right? I just don't know how they're going to be able to regulate this. I don't think you should be allowed to bet at all if you're playing in the game, regardless. That's just my take on it. It's been that take. We all know the Pete Rose story in baseball and all that crap. And he always picked, his Reds to win or whatever, but he's still not in the Hall of Fame and he never will be. Unfortunately, even though he's like the all-time leading hits, it's sad because it's like I don't know how you regulate this, especially with today's society with everything over online and there's a bazillion betting sites. Hell, I bet, but I don't think it should be allowed. It just sucks. Like you don't want this happening. I understand if you're confident in your team, but also these kids are getting paid money now. We have NIL. You're living okay even if you are a kicker, Christian. Ask Ohio State, man, about that one. I wish they had one. So, no, it's just one of those things, man. I just don't think it needs to be allowed. I understand where you're coming from, where you say, yeah, if you pick that you're going to win, I get that because that means you're trying. But this kid was also taking the unders in every game. Just ironically, he sucked last year, and I don't want to say I'm not saying that. I don't know if that's 100% true, but I'd seen that actually at multiple sites and. A couple other YouTubers actually talking about it, and I was like, "Holy smokes, man! Like that's a bad look, bro. Like that's going to be tough." So, the NCAA's got to figure something out on that. I don't know what the answer is. I really don't.
Andy Harris says, will you boys be covering NFL? No, I mean, right now we're just focused on college football. The first couple years of the pod, we're probably just going to try to focus on college football. If we can get it to a point where we ultimately want it to and we can pursue this, obviously, full-time, then, yeah, we'll look at probably adding a second channel and really covering a lot more of the NFL. And I can show Chris what it's like to really be, the resident reigning fantasy football.
Oh, my God. I'll be giving you a free education every week on the NFL. No, it's a good question. Like I said, if you guys can help us out, share videos, help us out, man, we'd like to grow. We're pretty committed to this. We know what we're doing. We have a plan in place. It's just baby steps, if you will. So.
Well, all right, let's jump into the next segment here, Chris. We're going to jump into a little which week 1 matchups are you most excited about?
Ooh, I like your voice there. You sound like a game show host. Here, I'm going to do this, Christian. I'm going to give you one, and then I want you to give me one. Does that work?
That works for me.
Okay. All right. I'm going to say week 1, And there's some interesting games, guys, out there. Obviously, there's a few. I'll say the big one first. Everybody knows this one: LSU at Florida State, right? To me, personally, super high on Florida State this year. Fear the Spear, baby. And I'm not even a Florida State fan. I just think that they're going to be awesome this year. I love Jordan Travis. I like what Mike Norvell's done down there. Both obviously preseason top 10. Anybody that's seen the AP and Coaches Poll came out recently knows that. Last year's game was super ugly. I mean, a lot of turnovers. I think FSU won that game like 24-23 or some shit like that. But you probably got two of the most intriguing quarterbacks in the country. Week one, you don't get that a lot with Jalen Daniels and Jordan Travis, right away. These guys are definitely in the Heisman race. So I'm very, very, very interested in this game. This one's an obvious answer. There are going to be a lot of people watching that game. And I think that game's on like a Monday night or something like that. Or
Sunday night.
Yeah. I mean, this game is the premier. I mean, even NFL fans are going to be watching this game. There's a lot of talent on both sides of the field. We don't have to talk about LSU, and we know how many guys they put in the NFL. FSU returns like 17 or 18 starters from last year's team. So there is a ton of talent in this game. I'm watching this as a fan. We're doing that game, but I'm watching this just honestly as a fan of college football. This game is going to be epic. I think this year a hell of a lot better than it was the year before, just with everybody returning. Christian, you got anything to say on that? And I'll also kick it over to you on your game.
Yeah, so I think, you're exactly right. I mean, this to me is a rematch from last year. I mean, it could potentially determine a playoff spot at the end of the year. And it's right away, week one. Just with that, because, basically somebody's coming out of that game with a loss.
Right.
And both these teams, you said it, Chris. Both these teams return more production than just about most of college football. I would say like 90% of college football. So, and both fan bases, if you tell them, hey, they're going to lose one or two games this year, they're getting pissed because this is their year. So, right. I could certainly see it. The game that I've got picked that I'm really excited, I got circled on here. We've talked a bunch of shit. We fired this fan base up. They need no introduction. Is TCU against Colorado. Right. The thing that I wrote underneath this here is, can Deion and Colorado compete, or are they going to get manhandled? Like we've kind of said, right?
Oh boy.
To me, I look at this, Chris, and I say, look, we know Colorado's got all this star power, out there at the defensive back position, right? They've got a pretty decent quarterback. We haven't seen him play at this level, so we don't know, right? And then lastly, they've got some decent receivers, but the offensive line and defensive line, how are they going to hold up against TCU, a team that returns some pieces from last year, and they go out and they get some – a lot of people are forgetting this, right? TCU's quarterback, I think it's Chandler Morris, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Yep.
He was
supposed to be starter last year, I think.
Yeah, he beat Duggan out, right? He beat him out last year before the season started. He got hurt, and that was his big knock, is he got hurt. So imagine having another Max Duggan-like player back there with a loaded running back room. They picked up Trey Sanders, if I'm not mistaken, from Alabama. They have JoJo Earl. They've got like 3 or 4 really talented 4 or 5-star guys that they brought in. Okay, just like Colorado did, but they're more of a complete team, right, with a coach that's proved it at this level, and Sonny Dike. I'm just saying right now, this is going to be not a close game. Chris, what do you think?
I don't either, and this is not because I can't stand Colorado as a school. It's I just don't see how TCU even loses this game or how it isn't a blowout. TCU has way more 4-star players, way more 3-star players. Sonny Dykes has been there for a while. Success last year, the years before. Excuse me. I don't know how Colorado walks in with a new head coach, a new quarterback, the smallest offensive and defensive line, Christian. I'll say it again. We got laughed off the internet about this. I don't see how it happens. Yeah, you got Jordan Travis. You got all these guys, Shador Sanders. I'm not saying those guys, they're great. They'll be great, but that's not enough. Football's a team game, man. And I get hyped up over this Colorado thing. But to answer the question, I'm definitely excited about it. I think everybody is. Yeah. I think everybody and their dog will be watching that game. TCU is right now, I think 20.5-point favorites or something like that. Yeah, I think TCU runs away with this one, especially in the second half. I think Jordan Travis is going to make a couple plays. I think Shedeur Sanders will come out there and look like a very competent quarterback. And this doesn't mean that Deion is a bad coach. You got to give this guy some time. Like I hate when people say that. And the some of these effing morons out here think that, they're going 10-2. Well, you're hurting your team there. And the expectations being set that high. That's ridiculous. The Pac-12 is loaded this year, and their schedule is brutal. So, like, TCU just came off a national title game where they got their ass beat, but regardless, they came off a big win. That's probably their biggest win in school history, was over Michigan, obviously. Yep. TCU did lose some people. Quentin Johnson at wide receiver, who was drafted super high, is on the Chargers now. They lost some pieces, but TCU had a lot of other pieces on that team too. And I just don't see how this game is even. You're right, Christian. I don't see this one really being close. I think TCU pulls away, especially in the end. Will it be an entertaining game? Yes. I want everybody and their dog is going to want to watch Deion Sanders coach at a Power 5 school. I mean, I don't care whether you hate him like I do or you're the biggest Deion Sanders simp in the world. It doesn't matter. It'll be a very intriguing game, and this is obviously one of those obvious ones I think everybody kind of knew, Christian.
Yeah, I mean, dude, you're not wrong. A lot of people in the chat, Daniel, Huskers, Andy, they're all saying, look, they're going to get manhandled. I mean, hell, I didn't even know they have a 450-pound offensive line, or just a 450-pound lineman over at TCU.
Apparently.
Sounds like my twin, dude.
Yeah, I was going to say, holy shit, you got like a stepbrother somewhere out there you don't know about?
He's floating down there somewhere in Georgia, son. I
mean, holy shit. I will go to my next game though. I got hammered on this one a little bit. Florida at Utah, baby. Everybody knows my love for Florida runs very, very shallow, almost like a plate of cereal. That's about where I'm at with that. This game is interesting though. Why? Florida beat Utah last year. Utah won the Pac-12. They're back-to-back, actually, winners of the Pac-12 last year. That's Billy Napier's biggest win in his first year. Was definitely last year, super early in the season. Not a good-looking game. Anthony Richardson, I don't even remember if he played well in that one. I think he did. That might have been his best game that he played in that game, to be honest with you. But Florida finished 6-7 last year. We know that. They got their ass trounced by another Pac-12 team in Oregon State. This game is interesting because Utah brings back Cam Rising, and there is a lot of talk right now. I heard today their coach, Kyle Williams, say that if they had to start today and play, Cam Rising's still not ready yet, and that might be just some coach speak or whatever because of the ACL injury last year. I love Cam Rising. If you guys don't know anything about Max Duggan last year, Cam Rising reminds me of the same player. The kid just plays his heart out. Just a tough-nosed, small-town kid, plays his ass off. He's a great quarterback. I love watching Utah play. They're fun to watch. So this game to me is very interesting just because, non-con, bigger marquee, SEC school in Florida. Obviously, we all know about Utah and the Pac-12 this year, and I feel like everybody in their dog, Christian, it's like Utah nobody likes. You know what I mean? If one back-to-back Big 12, and they never get talked about. Nobody says a word. It's just like they're slept on and nobody cares. They're so underrated. It's almost sad. And I like Utah. They're my favorite team in the Pac-12. And it's just like, damn, man, like they have a chance. They bring back a ton of talent. They still play smash mouth football, which I'm really big on. It's like, man, they have a good chance to win this game. I believe they're 7-point favorites currently, but that is another very interesting matchup just to see how they come against the SEC and Florida. Billy Napier's second year. They got Graham Mertz. I'm not even going to get started on that guy. Florida's defense is supposed to be much more improved this year, Christian, as we keep hearing from every fan from Florida. That's one of those games to me that's going to be very interesting. We're actually doing that game as well. I'm pretty goddamn pumped to watch that one as well.
I am too. Here's something else I realized here. So Cam Rising questionable for that game. Brandon Rose, I guess, has been ruled out. Because he's hurt too, so they're going to step up with Bryson Barnes, I think it is, who had 430 yards last year, 4 touchdowns to 2 interceptions. Had a similar completion. I mean, Cam Rising had 64.7 completion rating last year. By the way, Barnes had a 64.9, right? And their average about 7.9 to 7.5 yards. Obviously, the difference there is probably the amount of time that they got to play last year. So Chris, I don't know, man. I think they're in a good spot, with whoever they're going to trot out there at quarterback. They're going to play them really, really tough. The biggest thing that I have written down here for the Florida-Utah game, for the Florida man out there, is life with Graham Mertz going to be better than Anthony Richardson? I mean, whatever you want to say, right? Because Anthony Richardson, and I understand that it's all subjective, right? I mean, hell, Chris, you could probably go start for the Indianapolis Colts if he wasn't there. But, the big question is, will Anthony Richardson flash enough this year in the NFL with his limited playing time and will Graham Mertz disappoint you enough at Florida to make you see, hey, maybe Anthony Richardson wasn't the problem? Now, somebody pointed out on one of the videos, because we like to troll a little bit here. Kirby, I had to go back and look at this. I actually forgot about this. I've erased it from my memory. Kirby actually at Georgia lost to Vanderbilt his first year as a coach at Georgia. So I could see where some Gator fans are trying to draw similarities and parallels there. I look at this and I think it's going to be a tough year for Florida this year. We've touched on it, right? I'm only looking at what I've got to look at. I think that Utah will win this game. It's at Utah. It's a night game. So, again, this is going to be a very interesting game. I got Utah in the game. So we're going to segue that, Chris, to something very near and dear to your heart, and that is Nebraska, Minnesota. Right? The Matt Rule era begins, and who better to beat PJ Fleck and the Golden Gophers in the first game of the Matt Rule era here? You've got Casey Thompson, a new starter coming in. You've got not Casey Thompson. What am I trying to say here? It's Jeff Sims. See, we're living in the past out here, right? Listen, Jeff Sims, he showed me a little something, right? You got to keep him healthy. You got to pound the ball. The thing I like about the Matt Rule era, and this isn't necessarily a bad thing, right? You've got guys questioning whether they want to play football or not. That tells me, and it seems like almost an every week thing now, right? With the Huskers program, he's doing something right. It's something different than the last regime, and I like that. From the Minnesota standpoint, they lost, what was it, Mo Ibrahim? If I'm not mistaken, one of their best rushers in a long time. I mean, he was most of that offense. Yep. The question that I have is, and I watched a little bit of Minnesota's spring game, that it looked like a glorified shootout out there. So I think that Nebraska is going to be able to put the clamps on them on defense, and I also think that Minnesota's offense might struggle to score against them. So,
yeah, here's the thing. This game, I've talked about it a lot. Anybody knows, obviously, I'm the Nebraska man on this show. This game is just, to me, is very pivotal for Nebraska in their season and what people think about Rule and how we're going to do, right? We're going into Minnesota, and everybody hears the name Minnesota. Oh, they haven't won titles since the 30s. They're irrelevant, right? Well, unfortunately, they've been kicking our ass for the last couple of years, and they are about as basic and boring as you get of a football team to watch, Christian. They do. Tanner Morgan last year, been there, was their starting quarterback. I cannot think of his kid's name. He's like a foreign kid that could play quarterback, played a little bit against us. He's got a better arm, and he's starting this year.
Yeah.
But Minnesota loves to pound the football. They got one of the, if not the biggest offensive lines in the country. Back again. How do we respond to that? And I mean, we as in Nebraska, how do they respond? Matt Rule, first-year head coach, first-year quarterback, and Jeff Sims, I don't like that. I mean, as far as if I'm looking at this from an outsider perspective, that game is really in question for Nebraska. It's going to be interesting what happens this year. By the way, if you guys don't think, we know what we're talking about here, Minnesota's supposed to win some games this year. They're projected at 7.5. Nebraska's at 5.5. A lot of people think this game is Minnesota's. It's on the road for us week 1. But looking at this from an outsider view, this game is huge for both schools. Like, this is a conference game week 1. Those games are tough. We talk about Duke Clemson. There's another one I could have brought up tonight if I wanted to. There's a lot of those out there. This is huge. This is huge for both schools. I'm trying to make the case for both sides here, even though I'm the Nebraska man. But I did catch a little bit of the preseason game, like you said, Christian. It did look like a glorified track meet. I don't put too much stock in that personally. I think Minnesota's going to go back to doing what they've always done. I will say this. They are going to throw the ball more this year and be a little more versatile on offense than they were in the past. I mean, Mo Ibrahim had 42 carries against us last year, if I'm not mistaken. He had multiple games with 40-some carries. You never see that in college football nowadays. That's very rare to see. He's off to the NFL. But it's going to be interesting for both these teams just with the whole regime of different style of quarterbacks. You know, PJ Fleck's been there a while. By the way, they got some allegations being thrown around right now too, by the way. If we talked about Jim Harbaugh, PJ Fleck, there's some stuff going on in these Big Ten teams. Northwestern's another one, obviously, with the Pat Fitzgerald thing. I don't know if that's going to affect anything right now. I don't think so. But overall, this game is very, very intriguing if you're a Big Ten guy, and obviously on this side on the West. I will say this. I think that Nebraska has a chance in this game. I think Minnesota could come out there and just pound the football down our throats too. So I think this game is close. Right now, currently, what do you think, Christian? What do you think?
Yeah, I was going to say, too, as far as, you bring up a good point. So they're going to change their offensive identity to be more of a pound the ball down your throat to possibly trying to spread you out and throw the ball down the field on you, right? So to me, you look at teams that do that. I mean, if Iowa tried to do that, and I think they're trying to do that a little more, right? They're trying to be a little more innovative.
Oh, 100%.
First game, against a pissed off Nebraska team, we see it two different ways, right? And I think that is okay because, hey, somebody's going to be right in this whole scenario, right? And we don't have to wait very long. I mean, it's coming in about, a week and a half pretty much at this point.
Yeah, and you're right, though. But here's the thing about Minnesota. They don't beat themselves. They just don't. I've watched them play a lot, especially being the Big Ten man over here. They just don't. They don't turn the ball over. They're not going to wow you. They're not going to – they win ugly, but ugly in the Big Ten works. And that's the thing with them. And that's where this game, if you're even on the national landscape, and I'm not saying, obviously Nebraska and Minnesota aren't nationally relative as far as top 25 teams, but they're both teams this year competing in the West where the West has been wide open. It really has been. I mean, Purdue won the goddamn thing last year. Think about that for a second. No offense to Purdue, man. Or Purdue, if you will. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know overall, like I said, like as far as like intriguing games, but this is one, especially for me, Christian, you do follow the Big Ten quite a goddamn bit, even though you're an SEC homer. This game is very interesting week one. And that was the question. What games are we excited about? Obviously, I'll throw out even me being a Nebraska fan out the window. Is this game is I love watching two teams from the same conference play week one. It's obviously going to be very intriguing. I mean, there's not a lot of those that come around every year. So it's no different than the Clemson Duke game. I mean, we talked about this. And by the way, that was my other option of a team that I was going to talk about tonight was Clemson Duke. And we actually had a whole little segment dedicated to that a couple weeks ago. So it can happen,
Yeah, and I'll touch on that too with the Duke Clemson thing. I mean, because that's one I've written down here. I mean, obviously we put a video out about that. Go check that out. I mean, the biggest thing is, I mean, Duke can put them on upset alert very, very early in the season. So Duke's going to have to Clemson's going to have to come correct in that game. So it'll be interesting to kind of take a look and see what happens there. Chris, any other interesting games you got this year?
No, not week one matchups. No, I got plenty of them for the year, but I don't have. That was Clemson Duke, and sounds like we're gonna talk about one of these two teams here shortly. So
I think we are. I've got two more games I want to get to here, right? We'll kind of make it. Yeah, we'll make it quick. Yeah, go ahead.
I want you to make it quick. I'm going to use the facilities quick and tell the audience how these two games are super important.
Sure. So UNC versus South Carolina. Week one. I mean, that's going to be, to me, you've got two guys in Spencer Rattler and Drake May. I mean, that are maybe you could make the argument if they have a good enough season, dark horse Heisman guys looking on the outside in. This is two teams that obviously don't like each other. Two Carolina teams that can't stand one another, and they want to pull. They want to pull a victory week one and set that tempo. Because both teams, I mean, frankly, me and Chris have both had our respected things. I know Chris is super high on UNC this year. I'm really high on South Carolina this year. I think this is going to be a very interesting game between two teams that, once again, do not like each other. A little ACC-SEC matchup there. And then next, we've got West Virginia versus Penn State. All right, that's the last one here. West Virginia, Penn State. On paper, you look at it, West Virginia hasn't really done much. Penn State's projected to do a lot this year. The reason why I say that is Neil Brown and West Virginia, I mean, they've got to do something this year. So how better of a way to start it off if they can figure out a way to upset Penn State right out of the gate? Do I think it's going to happen? No, probably not. But man, if they can play them in a close game, that would make me happy, right? Just from a college football fan standpoint.
I have to admit, I know I was using the restroom there, but when I heard how did I pass up on SC and UNC week 1, Christian? I feel like now you might know more about college football than me, and that's a sad, sad day for Chris Vaca. But I will say this: no, I just want to touch on that one. That is a huge game. I am very high on UNC. I'm also very high in South Carolina this year. They're a very intriguing team. You know that as a Georgia man over there, Tennessee man. I mean, they have a kind of a crazy schedule and some of the teams they have to play. But I think a lot of with SC is like how they shocked the world last year, right? Dropping 60 on Tennessee, turn around, beating Clemson. You know what I mean? They're one of those teams that left on a super high note last year. Spencer Rattler's back, as you said. That's it. And Drake May, God damn, he's what? I mean, he's projected to win the Heisman. Him and Caleb Williams. I think that's like some of the biggest vote getters are all on top of that this year, Christian. So very good analogy, Christian. I am super proud of you bringing up that one. That one must have slipped through the cracks over here. And as you say, I am old as shit. Maybe I read it and just don't remember it. So.
No, dude, it's all good. Gators run the East. He says, I have a big upset for y'all. Duke beats Clemson. Yeah, and that's funny. We just talked about that. Oh, yeah. We agree. I agree with you, man. That is something, right? That is something that we've talked about here. A lot of people say we're crazy. A lot of Clemson fans like to, they left some comments saying how many national titles has Duke won. And I just told them, when's the last time you won a national championship? Nobody cares.
Yeah. Whoop-de-doo! No, thanks, Gators. Run the East. I appreciate that, actually. I can't believe I'm agreeing with a Florida man today.
See, it's nothing but love here, right, man? Exactly. I mean, you got to be. Real quick, Chris, because this got brought up, and I think this was very, very early on here in the chat. Let me scroll back up to it here. Something that I think is worth noting, it's something that involves college football player, and that is, let me see if I can't find it here. We'll just touch on it real quick. The Michael Orr situation.
Oh, God.
That's been such a... There's so many twists and turns with this. I mean, it's kind of, I've been keeping up with it a little bit, and you got to have to look through a lot of the jargon and everything like that. But basically, what's being alleged here is, here we go. There we go. Is what's being alleged here is that Michael Orr, right, when he turned 18 years old, he's saying they had a conservatorship, I think is what they called it. Yep. The Tuohys did over him to basically profit off of him and be able to make money off of him, and he didn't get anything. And then the Tuohys clapped back and basically said, no, we basically knew what would happen as being Ole Miss alumni, and we couldn't adopt him because of his age, so we had to do a conservatorship over him so that way we could step in and be able to house him so it wouldn't look like we were trying to skirt the rules or be a booster or do something like that and get him in trouble when the NCAA. My thoughts on this, Chris, are in between, with every story, there's always two sides. And somewhere in the middle, that's where the truth is, right? Again, I don't know. I don't have all the details. There's I don't know Mike Orr's financial situation, right? It's being alleged that he's trying to extort them for some kind of financial benefit here, right? I don't know. So this is a very interesting thing.
Yeah. I don't know. From my understanding, this was all set up. And if that's the case, it's kind of a sad deal. I don't know if you guys ever watched the movie Blindside. It's actually really freaking good. Sandra Bullock's in it. It's actually a really good movie, regardless whether or not it was portrayed when it came out as was a true story, right? I think a lot of people fell in love with it, right, Christian? I mean, the Michael Oher story. I don't know if you watched it, but I mean, she won an Oscar or some goddamn crazy ass award for that, by the way. I want to give you an interesting fun fact about this, Christian. Who was Michael Oher's head coach? Who just happened to be his head coach at that time in high school when this all went down?
Wasn't it one Hugh Freeze, if I'm not mistaken?
And then he was hired by Ole Miss a month later after Michael Oher committed. Imagine that. My thoughts are, if this did go on, it wouldn't surprise me. I know if you guys don't think that recruiting and illegal stuff's been going on for years, it has been. I mean, look back in the days of the SMU stuff and A&M and all that stuff. But yeah, this is kind of a big deal now, man. It's all over the internet. I don't know what you want to believe on it all, but what sucks is, like, I actually like the movie a lot. I've seen it a couple times. It's a really touching movie. I mean, not to get all sentimental here, but I mean, it's a really good movie. It sucks, man. It's like, wow, like, I feel bad for the guy. If that was, I think a lot of people bought into that whole thing. Like, man, this guy was adopted, played his ass off. He, obviously became, he's super highly drafted, had a hell of a year with the Ravens. He was, I think he's, if I'm not mistaken, he's damn near a Hall of Famer. So he had a hell of a career in the NFL. Guy was, actually, I know he's a Hall of Famer. So, like, yeah, it's just, it's kind of a weird deal, man, what's all going down with that. But again, it all comes down to money. I don't know, man. Just it's kind of a sad story personally for me, because I liked the movie. I did. I thought it was a really good movie.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really good movie, and I do remember when that came out. When the movie came out, like, he even kind of like downplayed it a little bit. Yep. I don't know if it was like, hey, obviously that's the way he felt the whole time about it, or what's going on. But again, it's just a very interesting thing to kind of look back and say, hey, man, who knows what's really going on with that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Chris, we'll segue here into the main topic of tonight, some Clemson Tigers. Woo! Chris, what are your thoughts on the Tigers this year, buddy?
Hey, like we do every preview, man. I love this part of it. Last year, Tigers, 11-3. Good season by most people's standards, I would assume. They were 8-0 in the conference in the ACC last year. That's pretty good. They averaged 33.2 points per game. That was 30th in the country, behind DJ Ukulele, as I like to call him, because I can never pronounce his last name. Now he's a quarterback over at Oregon State. They gave up only 20.9 points a game, which put them like in the top 25, which isn't bad. Strength of schedule last year was 42nd. They did lose, though, to an SEC school by the name of Tennessee. I think 34-10 or 14 or something like that last year. Christian, I want to know, and I know you're going to dig into some of the player stats here because this is your part of the segment here. But would you consider last year a bad season for Clemson? Because Clemson, to me, is probably one of the most interesting teams coming into this season.
Would I consider last year a bad season for Clemson? I think I'm going to answer this. I'm going to answer it this way. I think for Clemson fans, it was a terrible season, right? For their standards, like you said. I think for most college football fans looking at this on the outside, it wasn't really that bad of a season, right? No. And you go back and you look at the ukulele, right? DJ, that's why I like to call it. Right? He didn't have a terrible season last year, man. I mean, he really didn't, from a statistical standpoint, anything like that. I think the thing that a lot of these fans get upset about is it's kind of like Ohio State's defense in a lot of ways, right? Where these big games come around, Ohio State will put the clamps on somebody, week in, week out, and they'll look really good. And then when the big games come around, the offense just shits the bed. And I think that's what Clemson fans were really pissed off about. They had to endure that for 2 years. You go from, the Tajh Boyds, the Deshaun Watsons, the Trevor Lawrences of the, even what was it, Kelly Bryant, I think was their quarterback at one point. They weren't terrible at all. I mean, Kelly Bryant, I think, led them to a playoff spot. Now, they got beat in the opening round of that playoff, and then I think that was the realization the next year Trevor Lawrence came on campus, and it was a whole interesting thing. But yeah, to me, I look at it and I kind of just say, like you said, Chris, I don't think it was a terrible year overall for them. I just think for their standards, when you've won a couple national championships, in recent memory, it just becomes very difficult to settle for something less.
Yeah, I just want to hear your kind of take on this. I agree with you almost 100% on there. I think DJ didn't play as well as like most people would have expected, just because he was the backup to Trevor Lawrence for a year. He had that crazy good game when Trevor got hurt. It was DJ's first year freshman there, and he threw a shit ton of yards, came out just firing against Notre Dame. I'll never forget that game. But I will say, yeah, I mean, God, when you go 11-3, I mean, 99% of teams in the country would take that record. I mean, that's awesome. But I just see with Clemson, it's just because of the recent success, right? The Deshaun Watson year, years, and then you have, obviously Trevor Lawrence. We all know what those guys are doing in the NFL now, but like they put out so much talent. I just think Dabo, like this is a kind of, I don't want to say make or break or he's on a hot seat. That's not what I'm saying. It's just like they're a very interesting team to me, Christian. I know you're going to dig into stats here. I'm going to kick it over to you in a second. It's just they're very like Florida State is getting all the love right now, right? Social media, every YouTube channel, any college football podcast you listen to, everybody's talking about Florida State, right? I mean, everybody and their dog, including me. It is very interesting to see what Clemson does right away out of the gate. They got some tough games too, and we'll get into that. Christian, I'll kick it over to the offensive side stats, and I'll let you rattle it through here with, I believe his name is Cade Klubnik.
Yes, absolutely. So, Chris, look here, Dabo Swinney realized something last year, right? Just like Nick Saban realized, all right, a few years ago. Change is absolutely necessary, especially change on the offensive side of the ball, right, is needed. So in the offseason, the Tigers went out and they brought in TCU offensive coordinator Garrett Riley to help get the offense back on track and in a better positions. And you touched on him. Cade Klubnik's going to be the starter. He played a little bit last year, right? In 2 games last year, pretty much with him, he had 600 yards, 1 passing touchdown, 2 interceptions, and 2 rushing touchdowns. My big question is, can he step up and play better or get better help from the offensive line / receivers? I mean, because basically that's what you're asking. You're asking, can he play better than DJ did last year for you? I think, again, talented kid. I don't know because we haven't seen it. We saw a very limited sample size last year against, what was it, Tennessee?
Yeah.
And I just wasn't able to kind of do much against Tennessee's offense. Or defense, I should say. And Tennessee, just so everybody knows, isn't known historically for having a great defense.
Sucked last year overall
under the Heupel regime. So this is going to be really interesting, really quick. I mean, they returned 4 out of 5 starting offensive linemen, but they need to do a better job in pass protection if they want to be able to put up some better numbers this year. The receiving room is going to be led by Antonio Williams, Bo Collins, and tight end Jake Brennenstuhl, who all combined for 13 touchdowns last year. So that's pretty good. You know what I mean? They've got some guys that have caught some passes and some touchdown passes there. That's not bad. To me, and this is without a doubt, the best part of that offense is going to be running back Will Shipley, dude. I mean, dark horse Heisman contender at that running back spot. Yeah. He had 1,300 yards, 15 touchdowns last year. So I want to see them get him going early this year, kind of feed him, and kind of get him in a rhythm.
Yeah. No, you talk about the offense there. I will say, though, last year, I know you touched on DJ and Cade, and he is a part of this too, but they had the 66th best passing offense last year. I think that was part of a problem with Clemson, especially when you come from Trevor Lawrence to Deshaun Watson years. Those guys could sling the ball, obviously, all over the field. I will say this about Will Shipley. Yes, this guy is kind of underrated. Not a lot of people talking about it. If you haven't seen him play, watch him play. He plays week 1 against Duke, dude. This kid is a stud. You're gonna hear about him. Trust me. Cade Klubnik, his biggest problem, man, he turned the ball over too many times last year when he did play. Kind of erratic with the football. Christian, we saw that a couple times too. But he is talented, super highly recruited out of high school. He'll be better. I think Dabo is going to be better there too, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Christian, I'll kick it over to you. On the defensive side, I think they need to be a little bit more improved. They also, though, kind of ironic. I mean, they've been a team that puts out a lot of guys on the defensive side of the ball. My Dolphins have a couple guys from the Clemson team a couple years ago who were studs too with my team. So I know they put guys out there. I can name the names. I'm not going to go into that. But Christian, I mean, what do you think as far as defensively this year? They got to improve. I know they finished 22nd last year on defense, but
Yeah.
I mean, if they do finish in that's not terrible, but then their offense is going to have to be better to compete with the Florida States. North Carolina is going to put up a ton of points in that conference. We know that. We talk about Pitt. I think Pitt's going to be one of those teams. And then the team that very slept on this year, guys, Louisville. Everybody's been telling me Louisville, man. You guys are sleeping on Louisville.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, defensively, I'm not worried. I'm not as worried about that part of the ball for them. I mean, they've ranked really high every year in the defensive stats, right? And they always have really good defensive players. They always go to the NFL. So, I mean, Dabo's earned my trust, I guess you'd say, on that side of the ball there for you.
Right.
It's kind of like Tennessee's offense. Josh Heupel and them are going to have a good offense this year. I know Dabo and them will have a good defense. Also, here's a good thing, too, for you. Defensive coordinator Wes Gooden is in his second season, right? He took over for Brent Venables. And I have a feeling they're going to be even better this year than they were last year, right? They returned 8 starters from last year's squad, right? That, like you said, they ranked 28th in total in the country in total defense. Yeah, they lose Brian Breesy and Miles Murphy, but the front 7 is loaded, dude. I mean, if you look at their front 7, they're getting back Barrett Carter and Jeremiah Trotter at the linebacker position. They had a staggering amount, dude. They had 24 combined tackles for loss last year.
That's awesome.
So they might be one of the best linebacker duos in the country. They also are bringing it, or they get back both defensive tackles, Tyler Davis and Rook. Or Horo, I think is how you say his name. We're just going to say the defense tackle named Rook. You'll know what I'm talking about there. They're both NFL caliber guys, dude. And they should be able to hold the line down and put some fear into those opposing offensive lines there. Defensive end Xavier Thomas, he's going to be really good this year if he can stay healthy. I mean, I think he can get after the quarterback as well and be able to kind of put some pressure on him. And secondary should be good too, dude. I mean, look, the safety spot, they've got Jalen Phillips, Tyler Venables, and Andrew Makuba coming back, and that should be a good rotation for him there. So I'm not concerned as much on the back end of things there, Chris.
Yeah, no, I think overall, I think the defense is obviously, I'm not super sold on them being probably worse than what they were last year, but ACC is going to be interesting this year, Christian. There's a lot of teams with some firepower, bringing back some quarterbacks on some of those teams, Duke being one of another team that's obviously got a good offense too. So it's going to be very interesting this year. Clemson's one of the probably, if we had to question who is the most interesting team this year, I would probably put Clemson just because of Dabo, his success, the 2 national titles. I don't want to say a down year last year. It sounds terrible when I say that, but probably up to the Clemson man standard, it wasn't enough, right? I mean, they expect greatness over there. They've beaten Alabama. They've beaten some really good teams the last 5 years. So I'm with you, man. I think that Clemson is got a chance this year. I think we'll break down the schedule here in a minute. Let's pull that up, Christian. I kind of want to see that again, actually. Excuse me. Christian, I'll let you go first here and enlighten me because we don't talk about this before air. I want to see where you have these guys.
Yeah, so I've actually put them at 10-2, Chris. I mean, that's where I've got. I'm going to start right off with it here. Losses to Florida State and Notre Dame. Okay. I know we've said, hey, Duke can upset them, right? But again, and this is the way I like to do it. If I'm betting on this, I always look at the games that they should win and just say, okay. Right. They should beat Duke, Charleston Southern, not worried about. Florida Atlantic's going to be a very interesting team with Tom Herman and Casey Thompson down there. Still give me Clemson in that game. Then you play Florida State, right? So game is at Florida State, the game is at home against Florida State. So I like Florida State in that game. At Syracuse, that's an interesting game too. Syracuse is one of those weird teams. They were kind of like Northwestern where depending on the year, they're going to be really good or really bad, and you just don't know, so hold your breath. Wake Forest, not worried about it. Miami, no. NC State, no. They lost Devin Leary. Then you go, like I said, you're playing Notre Dame, Georgia Tech. Like Notre Dame, no. I don't think they're gonna win that game. It's going to be a very interesting game, right, to see what's going to happen. Sam Hartman could come in there and light them up. And Notre Dame, has a really good defense. Georgia Tech's going to be better this year. Still don't think they're at that level. North Carolina, that could be a potential loss too there if they're not careful. And then at South Carolina, this could be a team, by the way, Chris, and it just depends. I don't want to steal your thunder here. This could be a team that could be a 4-loss team if they're not careful.
No, you're not wrong. I don't see that happening, though, and I like your take on this. It's funny we have the same record predictions, which a 10-2 season is awesome. There's nothing wrong with that. Here's my thing, though. I haven't beaten Duke. I think that game is super ultra close. 100%. We're not worried about Charleston Southern. We're not worried about Florida Atlantic and all that crap. But the Florida State game to me, though, and I'm going to say this because Clemson has it at home. They had to hear about it all last year about how Florida State's, this year about how Florida State's going to be the best team since sliced bread, right? I'm a Florida State truther this year. That game is interesting to me because it's super early. Florida State either has a loss against LSU coming into this game, or they got to win, Christian, against LSU, which is going to be a lot of hype. We're going to see what happens here. This game, I would circle this on the old calendar, to be honest with you. Syracuse, not worried about it. So I'm going to say they lose to Florida State. I am going to say that. I should have marked that earlier. But, okay, we got Syracuse. We got Wake Forest. There's no Sam Hartman there anymore. Miami, NC State, nope. Devin Leary's out the door. Notre Dame, though, there's another one. You mentioned it. Interesting game at South Bend. We know how that is. That game is a night game, I think, too, if I'm not mistaken. Then it's Georgia Tech. I have Clemson. Excuse me, I didn't even get my pick there. They're going to beat Notre Dame. I haven't beaten Notre Dame, so I got Clemson with one loss. Florida State up at this point. Here's where they got to play after the Georgia Tech game. Two teams tough back-to-back. This is the problem. Before that, they don't have to play anybody back-to-back that's really tough or relevant, in my opinion. The North Carolina game, the South Carolina game. I'm going to give them the North Carolina game, Christian, Clemson. I will give them that one. But I think they lose to South Carolina at South Carolina to end the year. And I have them pegged at 10-2. Clemson's very interesting, though. Could they go 8-4? I'd also see them maybe going, I hate to say it, 11-1. I mean, it could happen with the schedule. They could beat Florida State. They match talent for talent over there. There's no doubt about it. It's just a very, very interesting schedule this year for Clemson. That's why I have them 13th in my preseason ratings, but they're one of those teams that that's not the end all be all over there, but it's just like, I don't know, man. They're one of those teams that's very, very intriguing. They're just, I'm not set in stone. I am about some teams, man. Clemson's not one of those. They're just too interesting to me. I just don't know what Kate Klubnik, if he plays like a Trevor Lawrence, I can't even throw that out there. Trevor Lawrence is one of the highest recruited guys ever and best, high school NFL ready guys ever. But if they get the ball rolling, get the ball to Will Shipley, they play defense like they should. Clemson's going to be tough this year. Dabo Swinney's not a joke of a coach. He's played in about every type of game you could possibly imagine. So that's where I'm at, Christian. I want to hear your thoughts here. I mean, what do you think? Do you think there's a chance they lose to South Carolina again? I mean, what do you think here? North Carolina, we know about Drake May and that offense, but and we talked about it, Christian. We had this talk about Notre Dame the other day. Notre Dame's got USC, Ohio State, and Clemson this year. A lot of people like to think they'd win one of those.
So you're saying you want me to talk more about Drake May? Is that what you're wanting me to kind of?
No. I'm just saying, Clemson. Do you think they? I mean, you said 8-4. Is that your? I mean, is that your basement for Clemson this year, or do you? What's their ceiling? I guess essentially.
I would say the ceiling. Man, I just look at. Yeah, I would say I could see 11-1 if Klubnik comes out and they're firing on all cylinders. I would say the basement's probably, like I said, 8-4. Okay. I think you settle somewhere in the middle of that and you go probably 10-2.
Okay.
No,
I like it. I'm just trying to make a case for this team. I don't know. Maybe this team was easy to rate for you. This team was very hard. As many as these we've done on random teams throughout this offseason. I mean, it's hard to rate teams on an offseason and we're not basing it off of last year, but you kind of have to with the players coming back. Clemson to me was my number one hardest team to rate, Christian. I don't know about you. They're a very big question mark to me because of their head coach, because of the success they've had lately. Will Shipley's back, but you got a new quarterback in there. DJ decided to opt and go to Oregon State. Kate Klubnik's this, super highly touted kid. I just, you know what I mean? This team is very hard for me to peg and where their losses or wins come from. I mean, I'm not, and take me wrong on the wins. I mean, we know they're going to win some games. It just, they got kind of an interesting, weird schedule to me. I guess maybe this is me talking here, but just a tough team to kind of peg. in my opinion, as far as wins losses go.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, I mean, they've got like we were talking about, Chris. I mean, they've got a good defensive record, or sorry, not a good defensive. They've got a good defense. Like they've got a defense that could probably get them to the playoffs, right? But then you kind of turn around and you talk about it where, from an offensive standpoint, there's a lot of question marks, right, around this team. And they also happen to be playing a lot of teams that are going to be really coming into their prime, right? Like you said it best. Notre Dame has been a quarterback away from really competing with everybody for how many years now? They finally feel like they've got it in Sam Hartman, and I can see that.
Yep.
Florida State, same thing, right? I mean, Jordan Travis over there. Yeah, I mean, he can be a guy. I mean, they beat LSU last year, right? And they had a good season. So I think, again, Drake May, North Carolina, he's been there for a while. This is going to be a very interesting thing. Again, and we talked about South Carolina. There's so many teams that are going to be really good this year. And that's the beauty of college football. And that's kind of like what we talk about every week, it seems like. This is why you expand the playoffs, by the way, right? Yeah. Because it's such a dog-eat-dog world there. So yeah, but I mean, I think we'll kind of turn it over to the chat here a little bit. Yeah. We've got Gators Run the East coming in here for us, and he says not in the Tennessee game like Florida was. I guess he is. Oh, okay. He was talking about, Crixus said, so was Missouri, and that's going back talking about at Florida State, 8-4, 9-3. Okay. So basically, yeah, we're just talking a little Florida State kind of football here, Chris. So not in the Tennessee game like Florida was. I mean, Florida's going to be, like I said, I mean, I don't know. As much, and I've got some really good friends that are Florida fans. So Florida is kind of one of those teams now that, I don't know, as much hype as people are saying, I'm starting to rethink it. Maybe we mispegged them.
Get the fuck out of here with that crap. Man, I'm sorry. Man, why is it? I almost think that you do this on purpose every week, Christian, to peg me against the Florida man. Florida's winning 4 or 5 games this year. And I don't even hate Florida, but they're not going to be good this year. Your schedule's too brutal. You can do this what if but whatever, woulda, coulda, shoulda. Their schedule is brutal. It's not happening. Billy Napier, I think he's a good guy, but I don't really know if he knows what the hell he's even doing. They recruit well, yes. But God damn, man, you're going to get me riled up, Christian. You know what happens? Now you're starting to rethink Florida. Next thing I know, next week, we're talking about Florida being 9-3 and, competing. Come on, man. Come on.
Chris, my big question to you is this. And it's seriously, I mean, and this is for really not just you, but this is for the Florida fans out there too watching the show, and that is, when was the last time a coach from outside of the Power 5 came into the SEC and was successful? We're not talking about coordinators here. But when was the last time? Because the last two that really come to mind for me would be Brian Harsin at Boise State, right, who went over to Auburn.
Yeah.
And then I want to say,
come out of the Power
5. I think, wasn't it Jim McElwain that was hired out of like Colorado State or something like that to come up and coach Florida originally? And then obviously you got Billy Napier, who was at was it University of Louisiana Monroe?
Yes, yep.
Raging Cajuns,
Sun
yeah.
Belts, yep.
Sun Belt. So to me, it's just one of those interesting things, right? There's a lot of I can see the comparisons a lot of fans have. Billy Napier going into year 2, they played a lot of teams really close. They lost some games that were really kind of weird games for him. But I don't know, man. I mean, there's just a lot of question marks there. I get it. You guys have a top 5 recruiting class as of right now. There's a lot, and this is because I was watching a lot of stuff about this too, right? Where it's, you watch some of these other guys talking about it, and I went to Twitter and I read a lot of what Florida fans are saying on Twitter about this, and it's one of those things. And I think this is something very serious here, right? You got to land the class. That is the most important part. You have to get them on campus, and you have to let them play, and kind of get them in the right positions here. To me, if Florida goes out and kind of like we said on the show, if they go out and they win 4 or 5 games this year, right? How many of those kids that are committed are going to end up staying committed? I know a lot's been made about they've all locked their decisions down, right? And that's what everybody throws out there, right? Is, well, they've shut their commitment down. Well, that doesn't mean anything nowadays, right? I mean, everybody shuts their commitment down until you hear about them. It always starts with, well, they're taking some official visits, this week, even though they're committed firmly to the Bulldogs or to the Gators.
Yeah, it don't mean shit, Christian. I mean, are you gonna make me read this because I saw this?
I'll let you read it.
I swear you do this on purpose just to get me hyped up, man. I swear. Did you all know that Billy Napier in year 2 at the Rage Cages was predicted to win, I'm gonna say 5.8 games.
Yeah.
And he won 11-3. Yeah, I don't know that stat, but Mr. Gators run the East. This was for the Raging Cajuns. This isn't the SEC, buddy. I understand that you're a diehard Florida man. I get it. I know the struggles. I understand it. I'm a Nebraska man. Trust me. I understand 110%, buddy. It's not because I pissed off a lot of Florida people. I swear Christian, like I said, pegs me to fight you guys over here. But I just don't see how on year 2 with Billy Napier that you guys are predicted to win 5.5 this year. And I don't know how you get to that. I don't. That means a win against Utah week 1. That means upsetting, maybe an SC or a Tennessee or one of those schools. Could happen. Maybe. But I mean, the SEC is so brutal, Christian. We talk about this all the time. Like their schedule is like probably the toughest. I mean, if not the toughest in the SEC. So like, I just don't see it happening this year. And I'm not trying to bag on the Florida man like I normally do. That goes back a long time ago. But here's the thing: I just don't see it happening this year, man. And you got Graham Mertz is your quarterback. I've watched him play at Wisconsin. He's garbage. He was terrible. You got DJ Lagway, I think, is the big recruit that's supposed to come in next year, I think. There's not a lot of freshmen that start in the SEC, though. It's true freshmen. We never see that. So Billy Napier's going to get another year. I just hope for the Florida man, if I'm a Florida Gators fan, this year is more just trying to keep the recruits and build on something positive. If they get 5 wins this year, I don't think anybody's going to be laughing at Florida. I don't. I just with the schedule, man, it is brutal. Well, you guys recruit well, but holy shit.
And you said something very interesting. You said you think Billy Napier is going to get another year there, and that's only if, because you got to think now, Chris. I really was curious about this. I went over to Twitter. The pulse around that Florida program right now is electric from their fan base.
Oh,
I'm not saying that is like, I'm just saying like a lot of Florida fans truly believe. This is probably one of the more realistic things I've seen, like saying they can win 8 games when they're pegged at 5 games, right?
Right.
I could see that. That's a realistic take compared to some of the people that are saying they're going to win the national championship. They're going to win 10 games this year. Yeah. They're going to beat Georgia and Tennessee out for the East. I mean, I just am looking at this and I'm just saying, listen. And I get, and you go on to say it just sets it up. It's like all the Colorado fans out there that's saying Colorado is going to prove you guys wrong and they're going to win 10 games, right? And I look at it and say, okay, it's a fan base that's already setting. It's like Auburn with Brian Harsin, right? They're setting these expectations super high. And let me explain something here. And he proves a really good point. He says, look who they played in 2019. Obviously, talking about University of Louisiana Monroe, and they beat them with nothing but 3 stars, right? I haven't looked back at it, but I'm going to tell you this.
Right.
It reminds me a lot. Saying things like that reminds me a lot of another guy in Scott Frost, who at University of Central Florida was they claimed a national championship off that year, right? He had nothing but like 2 and 3 star guys while he was at UCF. He goes to Nebraska. Part of the thing with Scott Frost, now I will say this, I like Billy Napier a hell of a lot more. He's got more juice to him. He's got more energy than Frost ever had. But one of the hardest things to get used to at this level, when you go from a group of 5 school to a power 5 school, is how do you handle, right? You're going from the 96 Toyota Corolla to the brand spanking new 2023 Ferrari in the garage, right? So it's really easy to get really sucked into this whole thing. When you're at a group of 5 school, you have to be really good at who you recruit, right? You have to be like dead on, spot on to be able to compete. And you have to be able to go out and get guys that fit your scheme and do what you want to do, right? Then you start looking at what you get to these bigger programs, these bigger tier programs like a Florida, like a Nebraska, like an Auburn. And you have pretty much unlimited recruiting money. You have access to a bunch of 4 and 5 star kids. And do you start going out and recruiting these kids based off of stars and talent and not necessarily what fits your program and scheme the best? And that's where this gets really, really difficult when you start looking at it. I get the hype. I really do. I just think, hey, it's about expectations. If you expect them to win 7 games as a floor, then, hey, that is a very bold take, and I hope for your sake it's not Georgia, but you guys do it.
You know what, Christian? I'm going to do something nice. I don't usually do anything nice. This is probably the nicest Gators fan I've met, Christian, in my time, short time doing this podcast. Gators Run the East. I want you to go over to one of our videos here, the promotional video for the PS5 and the Xbox. I will personally, if you put your name in there, I'll hit you up. I'll send you a free helmet, man. Little mini helmet of Florida Gators. Christian, this is one of the nicest Florida guys I've ever met, man. We usually get guys coming in here just bashing on us, talking a bunch of shit. I feel like being generous today, Christian, and I appreciate it. Gators Run the East. You've been very realistic. I appreciate your approach. I appreciate your fan support for your team. I mean, Christian's a Georgia fan. Obviously, he can walk around and knock every table down with what he's packing in his pants right now for the last 2 years. I'm the Nebraska man. I'm the guy that you see on the corner begging for money on his knees. That's me. So I understand where you're at. I get it. I do appreciate it, buddy. Thank you a ton, man, for being realistic with your realistic approach. I'm not saying the Gators can't go 7-5, by the way, they can. I just don't see it personally, but thank you for being respectful coming on here. Not talking a bunch of garbage like I see most of these people from Florida once in a while, just bashing on us. So thank you. Go ahead and go to our link. I don't have it pulled up. I think Christian might have it. Click on our video, say you subbed, and then I'll hit you over. We'll talk a little later, man. I appreciate it. I'll get you a mini helmet, though, the Gators, man, if you appreciate that. Like I said, thanks for being a 5-star caller, as I would say.
Yeah, dude. I'll chip in on that, too. So, I'll help the state of the Florida program welfare for your sake there, man. I really appreciate it.
Awesome.
Crypto says, what about Washington? I'm assuming he means like, what about the Washington coach that came in, Kalen DeBoer, and was able to kind of do things in the Pac-12 over there? Well, I mean, that's, again, that's an outlier, right? I mean, you don't see that often.
Excuse me. Yeah.
I mean, that's kind of one of those outliers, I feel like, that's just very, very tough to kind of gauge, right? I mean, like Luke Fickell's another guy that came from a group of 5. But again, they're not, and we kind of preface this by saying the SEC, right? The SEC. These guys that are coming from group of 5 to power 5. So I don't know. It'll be very interesting, like I said, to see. I mean, I could be wrong. I mean, maybe we pegged Florida wrong. I'm not saying we did, but hey,
it could happen.
I'm seeing the passion there, so we'll see.
Yep. Nope. 100%, man. Talk about Washington real quick on my take that Washington's gonna be good. I don't see anything bad going on there at all.
No, dude, I don't either. I mean, that's a program that's ascending. They're going to the Big Ten, right?
Yeah, it's gonna be, dude. I somebody dropped something today, Christian. I want to go a little off topic here. Just I was commenting in this section. I saw something today that said the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to Oregon and Washington. What is your take on that? What do you think about that? I had kind of some mixed feelings about this. That the Big Ten is going to have to adjust to Washington, Oregon coming over next year, and USC and UCLA, obviously.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but did the Pac-12 start playing defense all of a sudden?
Oh, he said it. No, I agree. No, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, since when do you coming over to the Big Ten? Like, I know people are going to give me the crazy stat. The Pac-12 has about just as many wins against the Big Ten and whatever. But recently, from what I've seen, the Pac-12, I mean, they can't even get in the goddamn playoff ever. So my thing is with that, it's like, I think they're going to have to kind of adjust to the Big Ten style of play, which is a lot like the SEC's. And I'm not comparing the conferences. Don't go down that road. I know the SEC is, superior. My point is with you, Christian, I mean, they're going to have to play some defense. Big Ten doesn't F around on defense. They sure shit. The majority of the teams definitely don't. You're going to be able to run the football and play a little smash mouth football. You know what I mean? I mean, we saw what Scott Frost tried to do with Nebraska. He said that they're going to have to adjust to my play style. Well, yeah, you had 4 years there and you had 15 wins.
Yeah, exactly, dude. I mean, it's you're exactly right. I mean, here's how this kind of works, for a lot of people that are watching this and are listening. And it's kind of like what I guess it's another point I was going to try to make about the Nebraska-Minnesota game here. And that is, when you're switching offenses, right, from a primarily run, the reason why a lot of teams run the ball, in the Big Ten is because they want to chew the clock. They want to make it as close as they can, and they want to play a tough, grinded out style of game, right? If you try, because if you try to throw the ball a million times a game and you're giving the ball back to the other team, you're setting them up in a possible favorable matchup there, right? So again, I'm not saying that, hey, some of these teams that are coming over here aren't going to be competitive year one, right? But and you can look at whatever records you want to look at, but when you're playing against Arizona or Colorado of the past and some of these other schools that you've been playing against, and you switch that out with having to play against, I don't know, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Iowa, Nebraska, any of those teams, it's gonna be tough, dude. I mean, you can look at it and you could obviously make the argument that the teams that really are going to benefit from this is once this whole quarterback craze, if you will, kind of gets done, sweeping the nation there with Washington and USC and Oregon when they lose Bo Nix and some of these things, it would be very interesting to me.
100%.
It'd be very interesting to me to see how they're going to fit long term in the Big Ten.
Well, that's the thing. You just said it. The weird thing about the Pac-12, this is probably the best they've been in a long time. Yeah. I mean, really, think about it. They got, Michael Penix, Bo Nix, Caleb Williams. They're all gone next year. Those three schools are definitely all going over. Now I'm not saying they're the whole team, but I mean, they lose a lot of pieces with that. Now you're coming to a conference where don't make mistakes on defense. Coverage is way tighter, by the way, in the Big Ten. If anybody doesn't watch enough college football, trust me, they are. Big Ten don't make a lot of – you don't see a lot of open receivers running down the middle of the field. You don't see the shootouts 49-42 like you do in the Pac-12. It's just not – it just doesn't happen over here. And I think that's where, like, this whole, question that I proposed to you, Christian, I think is kind of interesting. You know what I mean? I just want to see how this kind of adjusts. I mean, I'm not talking about the schedule flights all the way out to Oregon and USC for the Big Ten schools. I'm not talking about that. I'm just talking about strictly how are they going to have to adjust, to our style of play, I should say. And I can't believe I just said R because I am in the Big Ten. But, I mean, it's just it's a different style of play, dude. It really, truly is. We saw that with A&M and Missouri going over to the SEC, leaving the Big 12 back when Nebraska left the Big 12 to go to the Big 10. They really haven't done shit other than Johnny Manziel and that one crazy year with A&M. You know what I mean? They still really didn't, do anything epic. You know what I mean? Like, they haven't done shit since then. So I don't know, man. I wanted to pose that question to you and you guys in chat too, as well. Like I said, feel free to chime in. I just thought it was a very interesting take that I saw on Twitter or whatever. And I was like, man, that's going to be interesting.
Absolutely, dude. We'll probably hit this one, and then we'll probably bounce after this one here. But Gators runs the East says I was watching Fox Sports College Football Show. They have Georgia at 10-2. Listen, dude, if you go all the way back to the very start of this show, what started this off, I said this, and I've clipped it. I think I made a short of this, dude. I said I could see that, right? I mean, there's a potential this year with Georgia starting a brand new quarterback, right? Who's going to be the big guy? Who's going to be the big first round, selection that they've got there in the middle?
What's his name? What's his name's gone? Alexander gone?
Well, exactly. So you had Jordan Davis, who's gone from a few years ago. Devontae Wyatt, who played alongside him. Jalen Carter up the middle. Big Bear Alexander was supposed to be that guy that was going to step up. Now you've got some really talented, true freshmen there, right, that are going to be kind of in the middle. And then you've got some guys that have been around for a while, but they're not at that same level as far as talent, I would say. I mean, they're good guys that will be able to kind of plug double teams and do all that stuff at this level, but are they going to be able to get that north-south pressure that you want in the pocket to be able to let your edge rushers eat and clean up? I don't know, man. I mean, it's gonna be really interesting to see. I will say this though, Gators. I have been saying this. I think Georgia's in for a little bit of a down year, kind of like we touched on Clemson and some of these other teams. I think it's going to be one of those things where I could see it. I could absolutely see Georgia going 10-2 this year. I think it's an absolute worst case. The teams to me that I see they're going to have the most trouble with is going to be South Carolina with Spencer Rattler and Shane Beamer over there. I mean, they're always a dangerous team for us, especially early in the year. I mean, South Carolina has always historically been that team for us. Tennessee is another one. Heupel can dial up an offense, man. And then lastly, Ole Miss, right? Ole Miss is another interesting team. They're from the West. We don't play them all that often, so I could see that. Now, do I see them losing all three of those games? No, but I could see a scenario. I could see a scenario where we go 10-2, right? And that's part of it, right? That's just part of it. So it'll be interesting, Chris. I mean, I know you obviously your thoughts on it, but enlighten the audience.
Yeah, I'll. Here's the thing. I don't have Georgia winning 3 in a row. I mean, I'm going to take the side of history. Yeah. It's only happened like one time, and that was back in like 30s or some shit. So I just think Georgia goes 11-1 or 12-0 regular season. I can see. God, I mean, 10-2. Even to see that word next to Georgia is kind of funny because you just don't see it. Could it happen? Yeah, anything can happen in college football. We all know that. As long as you've been around the game long enough, you should know that. But I think they might slip up. Tennessee game is very interesting. And Georgia's, it's not because it's Tennessee. It's more, can Georgia reload on defense, which makes them, even if they have a bad game with Georgia offensively, their defense is always just elite. So do they bring that back, that type of defense again? I don't know. That's a big question mark. And I don't want to say big question mark. If they do that again, Georgia's running the table again, and they're going to find themselves in the playoffs, and then that's where it gets really interesting. So, good question, though. Very good question.
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, like I said, it's a fair point. It's one that we made. A lot. No, I mean we don't, dude. I mean but Auburn, and he says Auburn could. It's at Auburn. Dude, they've got Peyton Thorne as a quarterback there. I mean, let's be honest. He had one good season. Other than that, he was a very middle of the road Big Ten quarterback.
Yeah, I will say this though.
Conference, yeah.
I will say this: if Georgia, I believe whoever your quarterback is going to be, that is his first road game though against Auburn at Auburn. That's a tough place to play. That's a tough one for Georgia. But yeah, I don't have anything else to add to Georgia, man. I'm pretty much. Yeah. I mean, we know that. So
you got the helmet, son. Stop pushing with the Florida could upset Georgia stuff here. All right, you're gonna get us all fired up here.
Not gonna happen, man. I know you want it to, but that wet dream is gonna have to subside a couple years from now.
Mike says this. He's another guy we might try to get a helmet out to here before too long. Mike, obviously go to the video where the subs and just put your Chris. I think you said just kind of.
He's already done it.
Okay, good. Yeah, so we might try to look at. Maybe just drop your email address down there. We'll kind of get together offline and kind of figure out a way to make that happen for you. So until the 4 schools can play defense and recruit Big Ten linemen, they won't have much success. I agree.
Yeah,
I agree.
They're going to have to adjust. They're going to have to adjust coming over here.
It's a huge adjustment, dude. I mean, it's just night and day different. It's kind of like going from JV football to varsity football. Going from varsity football to college, going from college to the NFL. It's going to be a huge adjustment for them. Some teams, I would say one out of those 4 schools will probably have some success very early on, but chances are all 4 of them, or I would say at least 3 out of the 4 are probably going to struggle to kind of figure some stuff out because if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure all of them, when they come over next year, except for UCLA, is going to have a different quarterback.
Yeah, that's the thing. No, UCLA is probably going to start that true freshman kid that's like was super hyped. The other 3, they lose their QBs. It's going to be a different world, especially in the Big Ten. And as we touched on, both of us did. It's just like the Big Ten is just different. It is, and that's no knock against these teams, but the Big Ten week in and week out is tougher than the Pac-12 is week in and week out. There's no Arizona State, Colorado, those schools, Cal. You know what I mean? You're usually playing somebody like Illinois, Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan. Those are the big dogs, right? But even Nebraska probably should be better. Iowa, Wisconsin. I'm not saying the Big Ten is better than the Pac-12 this year overall. That's it. That's a really good debate, by the way. Is the Pac-12 this year better than the Big Ten? As far as the national landscape, Pac-12 is like probably at the peak. Unfortunately, it's going to be the Pac-4 next year. So,
we'll see. We'll
leave it at
go
that.
ahead.
No, I'll leave it at that, man. I got nothing else to add. So,
I was going to say we'll end it here, right? This will be the last one we'll take for the night.
Yep.
What about LSU? I've said this, and I'll stand on my head saying this. LSU is my dark horse to win the SEC this year, man. They get back more production than anybody else in the SEC. Brian Kelly won the West last year, his first year. Bama's going to be down this year. And when Bama's down, that kind of opens things up a little bit. Typically, LSU or Auburn normally step up. And I just see first year under Hugh Freeze, there's kind of going to be some things there with Auburn where it's, I don't know, man, this just opens this just opens up a lot of stuff for LSU this year. So I think, like I said, dude, I just think LSU is going to have a really good shot this year to kind of make it to the playoffs. What do you think, Chris?
It's not that I don't believe in LSU. It's not that I don't think they're a good team. You're laughing, but I think they lose to Florida State. I actually think they run the table after that. They make the SEC title game, and holy shit, whatever happens after that, man, I think it's going to be interesting. So LSU is going to be good this year. And I am not a Brian Kelly fan. I hate the fact that he even coaches there, but they're loaded. They are. They were awesome last year. They brought back a shit ton of talent again. They're a tough out. Ask Alabama. So, I think me and Christian are pretty close on LSU. Christian's just a little bit higher than I am on them, and that's okay.
Well, guys, listen, I know obviously that, we're asking when the next show is. It's going to be Friday at 8. Now, here's something we want you to do, right? Because we keep asking when the next show is. So what you do, just go to the channel, go to the live section button. Yep. And then because we always post it at least, I always try to get it posted by Monday of the week we're starting in. So I will say this, in season, all right, we're going to be changing the schedule up a little bit. So we'll do Saturday whenever the game we want to stream is going to be. Then we're going to do Sunday morning, right? So it'll be Sunday morning, probably around 9 o'clock. We're going to go live so that way we can do all the shit we want to do with fantasy. We'll do like a breakdown reaction to everything that happened the day before. And then Wednesdays at 8, we'll do that, obviously, as we look ahead to some of the games and preview some of the matchups coming up and doing all that, right? So to me, I look at that, and like I said, that's what we want to do. I think that's going to be the best. It works best for both me and Chris. I think from a viewership standpoint, it's going to be good. So that's what we're going to do. Do this. Try to get everybody you can here on the Friday show. We're going to start it at 8. We're going to be drinking some beers, having a good old time. It's going to be awesome, dude. I mean, it's going to be awesome. We're going to drink some beers. I think we've got a really good debate on that Friday show.
I'm already hyped.
Dude, I'm excited. Here's what I want to do. I bring the same energy guys on the Friday show because I really want to make it a 3-hour stream.
Yep.
I want to push Chris past his bedtime.
oh, son, you ain't even ready for this. I'm going to put you to bed. Let's just calm down. Come on, man. No, I by the way, guys, wrapping it up here. Like I said, like Christian said, yeah, bring people. I mean, hell, we see it in the chat. Let's do it. Let's be about it.
Let's do it.
People. Yeah, let's quit talking about it. Let's be about it. By the way, free PS5, free Xbox Series X. You guys, all you got to do is click on the video link. Just check our channel out for a second. Click on that. All you got to do is type in the comments. You guys are good at typing in the comments. Drop a sub, man. That's all you got to say. I put it in the tracker. Like I said, once we get to 1,000 here, we're going to get rolling because I'm telling you guys who want to get a part of this, by the way, it's going to get huge here shortly. College football season is right around the corner. So, like I said, love you guys. Love the support. We appreciate it. We're out, man. Thank you.